Good morning and welcome to Rise and Shine Sundays. I'm your host, Jamie Rich, and what you're about to experience is a live, unscripted conversation around a question where the answers arrive from the collective wisdom of the group, not some expert on the stage. So you're invited to be part of this conversation as well by either participating with us on the chat and YouTube, or if you'd like to come into the room with us, you can do that at rsslive.org. So this morning's question, 100 million years ago, there was a book that was called I'm Okay, You're Okay. But I think that somewhere along the line, a lot of us came across a book called I'm Okay, You're a Total Asshole. And this week, what we're asking is, what do you choose when understanding isn't enough? In other words, how do you deal with people whose views you can't understand, right? And we know that it's important to be open minded, it's part of what we do here. But one of the things that we're going to be examining today is whether or not staying and confronting something directly, walking away, any of these different strategies that you've applied in your life when you've come into contact in these situations when understanding isn't enough. So, as we always do here on Sunday, we meet with our roundtable, and with us this morning, a collective group of minds from across the globe. Good morning, everybody.
Good
Good
morning.
morning.
Hello.
Good morning.
So, I know that there's always this moment in the show where we begin and we decide, okay, here's the question. What do you choose when understanding isn't enough? So this was actually sprung from a conversation that was held during last week when Jaloki was sharing something. And traditionally, I do turn to Sang to sort of ground us in it. But do you, the two of you, want to battle it out as to who should sort of frame us for this morning? Rock, paper,
Rock,
scissors.
paper, scissors. Just kidding.
I'm better at dancing than battling, so we can dance.
I am with you. We shall dance.
Well, then, Sang, why don't you set the dance floor and then we'll start Jaloki dancing.
Well, it's fascinating enough, of course. Thank you. It's always an honor and a pleasure to start. And so it was, I came in. It was interesting because I went in here yesterday and I was like, I want to know what it is. And I was like, no, I'm going to wait till in the morning, like I always do, right? I don't know what I thought I was going to be doing, thinking I was going to look at it yesterday. And I really look at this and go, why, right? Why is there a point when understanding and knowing, I think that's something I added to that a while ago when I was talking, understanding and knowing is no longer the work because you know and understand why you do something. Why I almost like speak for myself. I know and understand why I do something. I know what my childhood triggers are. I have learned my patterns, the different things I've learned about myself. But then there's the difference between knowing and understanding and doing. And it's the awareness, I feel like, of a pattern, especially I know for myself, if I'm trying to break something, especially when I'm looking at someone else's behavior, because I get to choose how I respond.
Right.
And how do I do that? How do I experience that? How do I want to experience that? And I know in the past I could have been like, I'm just gonna pop off and say something off the cuff, off the wall. It's gonna be mean. It's gonna be this and that. And is that the energy that I personally want to put out there? And the answer was no. And so, and even though other people can be a-holes, I get to control how I respond, but understanding why doesn't necessarily mean I'm always going to be I'm not always going to be calm about it.
Right.
And so being able to have that awareness, interrupt what you understand and know, and then it then becomes a daily practice, I feel like, of reminding yourself of this is the thing I want to shift. What action do I have to take? What is it that I want to shift? What action do I want to take? And then it becomes that daily practice where I'm no longer yelling at people in traffic.
There you go. Well, you did a really beautiful job of not only framing the question, but outlining the journey, right? Because, everything that you were talking about was part of what happens when you take that recalibration and saying, again, what do you choose? You have a choice here to make in these situations. But Joloki, I also want to address the fact that a lot of people can't take themselves out of situations when they're going to be coming into contact with people they don't understand, whose views are oppositional to them. To borrow a phrase that's come up a lot of times, when that trickster energy is present when you're interacting with people, that you're coasting along fine, oh, I'm okay, and then again you run into the total asshole, right? And so you have to make a decision. So you said you wanted to talk about the dance. Let's talk a little bit about that. Would you be willing to talk about the dance a little bit?
Absolutely. Thank you, and thank you, Sang. And I love the way you started the dance, and I hope to, you to be continuing it in you know various rhythms and melodies and moves. And so I am sometimes one of these people who find it difficult to kind of extirpate myself out of a situation when I feel that someone or some group or something that I cannot avoid, in front of me, either because of the situation, either because of a power dynamic, etc. And I feel that they don't only uh, not align with my views, but there's a threat. There's an harm either against me or someone I love who love me, or anyone, actually anyone, or anything. And so first, I think I'll okay, yeah,
Take
back
your
to
time.
the pause. Thank you.
Yeah.
back back to the pause. Personally, when I feel like okay, I'm reacting, I'm not using wisdom. It's the amygdala, the reptilian brain who's functioning here. So okay, there's no understanding here. I feel that that person or that group is light years and several universe away from me. Okay, pause. And the pause first, hopefully, first I remember, okay, we're in a particular time. We're in a time of transition between a past more or less balance or equilibrium and a future more or less balance and equilibrium. And in the middle, we're in chaos. And chaos is positive for the potential of change and betterment that it can bring. But also, chaos feels destructive because it is. It destroys something that was, so to allow to build something that is coming. And if I'm going to use a political analogy just very briefly, uh, there are two main forces, I think, in life, especially in the dimension that we're living, where duality is has a big importance. You have the forces of conservation, the conservative forces, the preservation, and you have the forces of progress in the sense of change, and we need both. But right now in the world, usually one will feel more connected to one or the other. So first is the pause and remembering, okay, this person is representing something that I may not be relating to personally here, but they have validity. They I have to eliminate the a-hole thinking, because if I think you're a-hole, then you have the right to think that I am too, and
Right.
then where are we going? Okay, so
Well,
that's the first part.
Well, wait.
If
Now, I want to keep this dance
I'm wrong.
going because you brought
Yes.
this up, right? You
Yeah.
introduced the dance analogy today.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
want to
Yeah.
tap you on
Okay.
your
All right.
shoulder now because you
Yep. Right.
use the word government. And there's only one person in this room that I'm aware of that has held elective office, right? And Claudia, I want to bring her in before you go on with your second point, Jaloki, for
Sure,
a
sure, sure.
reason, because when you're dealing with constituents, if you're somebody who's held an elective office, right, it's not so much you can take the pause, but you also have to have this happen repetitively. Does that make sense? It's a repetitive opportunity. And Claudia, do you feel like adding any expertise in? Can I tap you in and bring you in on this dance?
Well, what you said is true. When you're an elected and you're dealing with constituents, many times the understanding isn't enough on both sides. And so we end up at a blockade, at a wall. And what I did, and I still do to a lot of extent, is ask people what their vision is. And many times getting a vision is the common ground you're looking for.
Love that.
Because when you are confronted with someone with what appears to be completely opposite views of you, then your first reaction is to defend your views. What I have learned since I've been out of office is not to look at what I am doing in a situation. Yes, that's important. Take the pause, definitely. But where my mind automatically goes is, who am I being? And that's sometimes that's a very different place than what am I doing?
Yes, absolutely. And before I go to you, saying I want to do one quick thing with Claudia though, because the question that you said, "What is the vision?" is the reflection of your being. Does that make sense? You've chosen when you say, "Let's see if we can establish a common vision, a common ground through asking somebody a question about what's your vision." That is you've asked them to project into a being state, more or less, correct?
Correct. Exactly.
Love that. So saying what builds from there? Now that we're
Well,
bringing you in for this leg of the dance.
I know, and then I want to get back to you, looking for sure, because Lorene and I were talking right before. We were talking about exactly what you're talking about, Claudia, the vision. Like, what is it that you see for yourself? And then I was quickly reminded of this course I took called Rewrite Your Future. And because I literally printed it last week, because I was like, I want that at my desk. Because when you think about, I know when Claudia talks about going back to self, what is my vision? Then it becomes, is everything that I'm doing on a daily basis, even those small decisions that I understand but still make unnice choices for myself, right? How do I break that pattern? Right? And that awareness comes in. And then again, like I was talking about, the daily practice. But when I'm looking at Rewrite Your Future, it's everything I'm doing on a daily basis is allowing me to be one step closer to that future, even if it's 1% more today.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We're tapping you back in on the shoulder. I feel like we're going to be doing this dance through this entire show. So, tag off. Jaloki, do you want to talk about two or Ray?
Yes, sure, sure.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And I'll close what I was saying. And it's exactly in line. Claudia and Sang actually said what I'm going to say, and maybe in different words. For me, this the next stage was, okay, we don't understand here, the words are not enough, and there's no understanding. Is there a connection? Which is the vision. And but then when I'm looking for the connection, in the word connection, the con from Latin means, with. Uh, there's an invitation. Okay, I want to connect. We can only connect if you want to connect too.
Yeah.
So I do my 50%, and can we meet? We say in the middle. It's not exactly in the middle, but now, if the other person doesn't respond to that, then I'm gonna introduce here a Rastafarian concept. Okay, instead of understanding, I'm going to overstand, and that means I'm I'm going to the higher level, and the higher level, as you said earlier, and Sang said too, will tell me, depending on the situation, okay, do I have to move away, just dismiss it and leave if I can? Okay, do I have to stand my ground? Do I have to confront and fight? You know, depending on the situation, but that will not include the collaboration, because there's no intention on the other side. I choose what I do,
Mhm.
and it works sometimes, and sometimes it doesn't.
All right. I love that. Ollie, it struck you struck a chord with Ollie. Ollie's going to tap in now. Cha-cha with us, Ollie. What's going on?
I'm really blessed to bring my voice in the ballroom, in the dance room, to bring my ambassador vibes also. And I will pardon you French, dear Jamie, twice. And Joloki, I will give you 2 points. Uh, because a whole needs not to be expressed, but it's okay. I think I will first agree with Joloki, because I was really telepathic vibes of 1 minute before. I was already having the idea of understand and overstand. And then the question, what do you choose when understanding is enough? I want to point a few things. You, the you know, or the you in the past, or the you in the future? Because we are not the same across our timeline journey. Then choose means decide. Decision is really not easy, because most of the time it allow results that is binary, yes or no. And then understanding, overstanding, and then isn't enough. What do you define enough? What do you need enough to understand? And based on the talk before, I was also having some thoughts about the fact that, does the person in front of you wants to infuse some of his ideas, or wants to contaminate? Because infusing means that there are some that are allowed to stay, and his ideas, it will percolate within you or not. But contaminate is okay. Let's spread all his ideas, and your ideas are vanished. So I think that the most important is to speak, not to convince, because also in convince there is convincere, to win, but speak to bring some ideas in an autonomous, efficient, and decision way that the other has to choose. It's
Yeah.
like, I'm not going to say A to Z without you to be able to say no. This okay, this not okay. So that's my share. Thank you.
No, that's great, Ali, because one of the things that you're talking about is reintroducing a word we've used in the past, which is the threshold. Enough is a self-determined threshold, right? And so that's also has a sensibility to it. But Ray, I wanted to bring you in here because you're really good at the abstraction, the concepts, and I want to go back to something that Jaloki was saying, which was he was talking about trying to establish a connection. Claudia spoke to the vision. And then finding common ground. There are different ways. Like one of the things that I've often found with people I vehemently disagree with, we sometimes have a deep appreciation of dogs. you know like and if I'm looking at somebody who's like, I really don't understand who this person is, you got to go to their Facebook page, try to figure them out, and there's a picture of them, being this great supporter to dog and cats and whatever. And there are ways in which we can create that connection other than visually, right? We can find that common ground through what? Common experience. Does this speak to you in any way? Because I think that's an important part of like what connection is, you know, when you've reached that threshold, where can I find that connection, right?
I think.
Oop,
Oh, go
let
ahead.
me
Go
let
ahead.
Ray
No,
finish.
jump in,
Wait,
Sang.
no,
Go ahead.
right. I was thinking out loud.
Please.
It
Please
never
do.
happens here. It never
Go,
happens.
Ray. Go, Ray. Go, Ray.
I wanted to connect in, and you'll probably want to jump into this saying as well, is I was just weaving all this stuff in my brain that each of you shared, and is okay, we have this encounter with an individual or individuals within whatever setting. So what was the flow? You started it saying with the, okay, so what, so you become aware of, okay, so how am I going to be in this situation? So what started to emerge in my brain was, okay, de-escalation, invitation, and both Claudia and Jamie, you brought forward the idea of, okay, how do we find this common ground? So through intent, um, and I'll explain a little bit. What's interesting is de-escalation means, okay, how do I reduce the energy level to find the common ground so that an invitation can be, so the connection, part of de-escalation, I know not very much about it, but I've watched some shows that have impressed me where de-escalation starts with very simple things where you actually reach out to the person as a human, no matter what they've said or their tone or whatever, and it's through observation, like you said, Jamie, is okay, if the person has a dog or happens, you pick on a detail, and it's usually a connecting in point that expands the discussion to a new level, as Claudia mentioned with vision. So that's where the intent is. Where does the person want to go with this? And quite often, as Sang has shared before, and all of you, is what they're saying is not really what's bothering them or what's driving them. There's something else going on. So the intent, so de-escalation through bridging was the other term, is okay, how do we bridge us as a human being to another person, so that's what I think Yogi said as far as invitation. So then all of a sudden you're changing the dynamics, and you've elevated the discussion to a bigger area where they can ask questions. The other example that I watched recently, where two individuals were having a debate, and the person elevated the discussion to a new level by asking, what is your intent? So he was doing what Sang does. What do you mean by that? So what is your intent? And the person said something really interesting that surprised me. He said, why is that important? Why does that matter? And the guy says, it matters a great deal because, and then all of a sudden the conversation completely shifted. So he, in his own way, de-escalated, connected in with the bridge, which the invitation is, as Yoloki and Claudia have mentioned, the invitation is to bring somebody in to a new sphere of discussion, as opposed to the confrontational elements that were existed prior. And it works sometimes, but also what Yoloki pointed out, and I'll stop here, is that then it gives you the ability to, is there something that can be salvaged? If not, moved, as Sang said, move to the next level of strategy, is where's the door or where's the nearest object that I can pick up to defend myself.
There you go.
So back to Sang.
Thank you. I'm going to say something. Seeing the exit door isn't the same as taking the exit door.
Yes.
Right?
We're finding it first.
Right. And I think that's where this is, right? Where seeing the exit door is understanding and knowing there's an exit door for me to take. Right?
Absolutely.
It is now my choice. Am I going to break this pattern and walk out the exit door and choose something differently? And what happens as humans, I think we've talked about this before, where our eyes are the ones that it's evidence. What do we see? I got to see it to believe it. That's what they say, right? And that is something that is deeply embedded in humans. And so when you are able to do that pause, pay attention to your own patterns, right? I know for myself, if I feel rejected by someone, I would normally reach out. But this time I'm like, I'm not doing that, because that takes me down a path of something I just don't want to go down. But I'm like, why am I always having the same conversation? And then I have to stop and recognize there's a pattern with me. Then what do I want to do differently? What do I want to make this smooth, right? In terms of now, when I go out the exit door, what am I choosing when I go out that door?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You know, saying when I love my little white cards that I kind of write down while Ray was talking, where he was talking about finding the human connection and then pick a detail that expands the discussion. And the word keeps coming up, which was de-escalate, de-escalate the situation. But what you introduced was this idea, because Claudia talked about it initially, where first that de-escalation has to begin with yourself, right? I have to de-escalate me first. Now, if you've been an elected official like Claudia, sometimes you're going to get tripped up in public, right? But the somatic experience of what do I choose to be in a situation where people I know who are going to be combative with me or discursive stems from not what am I going to do, as Claudia said earlier, but what do I choose to be in those situations? So if we can look at these moments where I'm okay, you're a total asshole, right? If we look at these as learning experiences, yeah, I know I said it a third time, but it's YouTube. I think we're going to be okay. I then have to make that decision to de-escalate me, right? Because there's no way that I can de-escalate the other person unless I'm being in that state that of the other. In other words, and I love how the dance metaphor comes back in. I cannot lead someone in a dance, right? If I'm in a position where my movement pattern isn't in support of them moving along with me. Does that make sense? Yeah, Ali.
Well, it takes two to dance tango, that they said. I think it's also important for me to, if there is a battle I have to fight, there is a fight, flight, freeze response. But is it really worth my time, my energy to engage in the battle? Am I the only one in the battlefield against so many, or do I have allies? And also, how is my energy right now? And maybe sometimes I flight rather than to battle, but I might stay in the battlefield if I'm not the only one that is impacted and harmed. So because I'm with myself, okay, I flight, but with others I will stay because I see that I'm not the only one impacted. So that's my share. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And one of the reasons why I wanted to introduce the word choice is because I knew that when I'm forgetting who was with us last week for the first time, suddenly the name just escaped me. Yeah, Claudia, go ahead. Let's keep the dance going.
Well, one of the things that I learned as a public official is oftentimes, especially when you are working with other public officials to come up with policy, you debate. There's a debate that happens. Excuse me. But when you're dealing with other circumstances, like personal relationships where you may have conflict, you have to, for me, I have to change my mind. I had to change my mindset from debate to dialogue. They're two very different things. Dialogue is a person to person conversation. Debate is actually to engage in a competition in order to prove the accuracy and the superiority of one's own positions. Now, there are times when I have found that even switching my mindset to dialogue isn't enough to bring about common ground. And so, yes, I have to walk away. I have to allow that to stand and just be apart, unfortunately, from another person. Also, while realizing that there's a lot of complexity and nuance going on, and I may or may not understand it all. So, taking that into account, I don't look at the other person as an a-hole necessarily, but as another person who has a lot of complexity and nuance. And so does the relationship I have with them. So these are many factors I think that I have to take into account. But like I said, at times I still need to walk away.
Mm-hmm. You know, I am going to take another little pause here because I'm always amazed in the room when the metaphor kind of comes in, because the dance metaphor really does hold. You know, you saying you were talking about looking for the exit sign, Claudia just talking about knowing when to walk away, recognizing the difference between a dance, which is happening where there's different rhythms, the debate versus the discussion, thrashing around with another person. You know, I mean, we've all been in those situations where the dance isn't a dance, it's just two people, just it's like wrestling, you know what I mean? So it's that same sort of thrashing that's going around. But you know, the beauty comes from understanding that, you know, we're called a lot of times in life to dance. We're to dance with people we don't understand, and it's best when we come from that idea of a threshold that's good for us, right? And that we can tell when the dance is no longer serving us. It's not a dance, we're not working together, you're thrashing me around, or we've gone to, and sometimes you just need a break. It's like I know as a mom, right, you know, sometimes you just have to separate the kids, right, to get them to, you know, to do that. And you know, we forget that all of these things that we think are intellectual discussions about what do you choose when understanding isn't enough, there's this somatic thing that happens, right? Because sometimes we do want to, you know, just like Jaloki said at the very beginning of this conversation, you know, there's a time for the conservative sort of approach, there's a time for the progressive approach. It's that, I'll use a Ray word here, that tensegrity, right, that kind of keeps everything held together. But it's when that imbalance, you know, I wish there were more healthy debates that took place in our culture, that we understood what, because debate has rules, because then it just becomes name calling, right? Or so uh, let's continue to embrace this dance, right? And but I just wanted to call it out as a group because it's a beautiful way of looking at things, which is, you know, we're dancing along fine here, you know, and we need to then recognize when there's something that's too much. Does that dance metaphor still hold up? I mean, you know me, I pick up these things and it's just like, because it wires it in, right, of an understanding. Was there more to say, saying?
Oh, always. um, I love the dance metaphor as well, because it's like, I remember like in Dirty Dancing, right? This is my space, this is your space, let's cha-cha, right? And I always try to remember that. And then there's something that we were talking about here. I love that Claudia said, instead of debate, she wanted to have a dialogue, right? Debate is confrontational. And so as I'm listening to everyone in here, I'm very particular about word choices. And so the word battle is very masculine, right? The word confronting, very masculine. Debating, right? Even though it is a debate, like we have to remember why these words came to be and how we use them. And so when you use those words in your everyday language, that's the unconscious mind saying, okay, battling. But what if you walk in and say, I'm going to have a dialogue today. I'm going to sit here and assess and see what's going on, instead of blowing up or not understand, not attempting to try to figure out what words do I want to use. And I remember this when I was doing a campaign in a nearby city, and I was talking with the lady, and she goes, all of you are using this very battle war type language. And when you're using that war type language, you're emoting that energy, right? You're just putting it out there. Whereas you're really trying to calm people down, but we also don't choose some of those words to help calm a situation, or even our voice, right? I call it the mom voice, where it's like, okay, so Ray, is everything okay with you today? You know, it's like, yeah, everything's fine with me. It's like, okay, all right. How's your morning, right? Like, just kind of asking those, what we were talking about, asking those probing questions to kind of that de-escalation that we were talking about, and to be able to pull that down. But I will definitely say the power of language, because the power of words gives us the power to love, the power to create wars, right? The power to create so many things with our word choices as well.
Now, Ollie, I'm a bit concerned because when Shane was talking about war, you suddenly raised your hand. So let's be gentle here.
Well, yeah, I'm really gentle. It's just I agree with saying debate. Like it's the root means to fight, to go to battle, and even I would assume that campaign is also military based, because a campaign, a competition. I think the most important is that there is debate to dialogue. If we want to de-escalate, it's also about to have pause. I hate when I watch TV on debates, and there is one person that is always over speaking to others, trying to prove their points. That they're each and every time, like, I want to win, so I over speak, I cut all the people. Let's have a breath, let's have silence. And there is also the primal effect of the brain, that on the first seconds you are having a first impression about someone. And if this person is saying, oh, thank you for joining, it's a blessing to have you here, these kind of things, rather than to, okay, I'm envisioning right now the battle I'm going to have with this person. So I think the most important is to set the stage. And of course, we are only on control of our reaction, not on there. But it's also to realize that if it's too much, we have to evade, because it doesn't it doesn't serve the point, even by instance in a public debate, to see two people fighting while someone is kind, because the kind person could say, okay, I'm not feeling my energy useful, so I'm going to escape and let you handle that. So that's my share. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great. Claudia, something sprung up for you.
Yeah. You know, when you are in a debate with someone, or when I'm in a debate with someone, I listen in order to find the flaws and the errors in that person's positions, and to provide very effective counter arguments. But when I'm in dialogue with someone, I listen to understand. And there's a very different feeling about that, listening to understand as compared to listening to find flaws in another person's argument.
Absolutely. And I think a lot of our interactions are still based in the debate metaphor. I mean, that's a whole nother Rise and Shine Sundays conversation. But how many times are you in the presence of people who are listening to simply punch holes in what you're saying? I mean, it's huge.
That's very true. Most definitely. But if I feel for myself, if I'm sitting with someone like that and they're just trying to punch holes in everything I have to say, I think that for me, that's the time to walk away. Because if I have not demonstrated the how do I say this? The difference between dialogue and debate by that point, then it's not going to work. And we're living in a time right now when it's very difficult to demonstrate that dialogue, dialogue meaning as compared to debate meaning.
And that was one of the guiding reasons why we did this type of dialogue, was to have an example out there of a discussion in which we work vigorously to make sure that the voices get heard and that everybody has a part in the dance, right? Like, it's not to poke punch holes in anybody's idea, but to really do what you've been so beautifully embodying, Claudia, the idea of eliciting the things that are being said that resonate in common. And so, with everybody's permission, one of the things I want to do, I want to come back to Jaloki.
Of course.
Because I do want to give some time this week to an aspect of the conversation that you talked about last week, which was oftentimes our conversations talk a lot about our interpersonal relationships. But one of the things that you have expertise with, because you've lived in different cultures and in different societies, you've been the different person in different cultures and different societies, right? How do we deal with it on on our personal level, but then it gets amplified in the macro, right? You know, we find ourselves in situations where when we're dealing with large groups of people, in other words, here, I'm going to borrow the metaphor for a second. There's the one thing about dancing with a partner. There's another thing about choreographing an entire group of people to move together. And I feel like you've had a lot of experience in that idea of working with large groups of people together. Would you, what do you choose when you've got a group of people who at large are kind of in discord with one another? Or is that something you would be prepared to talk a little bit about on the fly?
What do you think my answer is?
I don't know. That's why I asked.
Well, first, I preferred the second term that you used, that I have some experience, than the first term that you used, which was expertise. I don't feel myself as an expert unless we talk about content expertise and context expertise. And so I have the context expertise, which means the experience. So I'm going to enter this subject with the golden rule. Golden rule that has been taught by many cultures and teachers, including in Christianity, in Buddhism, and in Islam, and etc., was several thousand years ago: treat others the way you want to be treated, or treat your neighbor the way you want to be treated. Now, a little parenthesis, a little note: some formulation of the golden rule, including from Jesus, was in the negative. Do not treat others the way you do not want to be treated, which is a little different. But we can go back to that. I am saying now that the golden rule is not enough anymore for us, because it was enough and effective when your neighbor was speaking the same language, had the same religion, had the same worldview, maybe even the same ancestry. You were part of the same community, same clan. You ate the same food. You kind of like the same thing and dislike the same thing, to a certain degree. So it kind of worked. We're not living in that world anymore. Okay, my neighbor has a completely different set of values, of preference, etc. So I suggest the diamond rule, which is treat others the way they want to be treated. Okay, now this creates more difficulties and challenges, because in order for me to know how they want to be treated, I have to engage. I have to. We have to find a common language. Okay. And that's where, for me, I don't want to be too long, but then right now I'm thinking about principles in Haitian Vodou, which is that when you start wanting to know someone and you find way to know them better, you start respecting and admiring them better, more.
Yeah.
And there's a spiral, a upward spiral. The more you know, the more you respect, and the more you respect, the more you will know, even if the person has views that are completely different from yourself, because I can understand that, okay, if I had the same if I had exactly the same life and the same experiences as that person, I would think and be the same as they are. Now, this still involves the collaboration of the two. And so sometimes it doesn't work. And sometimes, if I don't have the possibility or the power to walk around, I have to fight back to defend myself.
Got you.
The dance becomes war.
No, well, yes, and I hear you, but there's so many things that you were so beautiful. I want to make sure that we anchor in this whole idea of the diamond rule, which was treat others the way they want to be treated, right? That elicited some comment from the YouTube chat. We've got, I always go back to the logic of seek first to understand, then to be understood, right?
Yep.
So that's an aspect of that diamond rule, right? That you want to be able to embrace this whole idea of, wait, I have to then have an awareness of how these people want to be able to be treated. And that informs my decision. And Laureen was talking about how brings a level of engagement with curiosity, right? The idea that you're doing it. And the other thing that just jumped out at me when you were talking about the fact of, yes, at one time on the planet, we came from the same culture, right? And we were able to sort of see these external markers. Well, I hate to break it to you, but we're the actual embodiment right now of this moment of defining a global culture, which
Yes.
is not defined by physical appearances, shared backgrounds, but going back to the kind of concept that Claudio is in, which is a shared vision, right? The shared vision of defining that global cultural, community that we find ourselves in. It's defined by a lot of the principles of the diamond rule, right? Because in order for me to say, well, wait, um, Sang's lived experience is very different than Ollie's, very different from Jaloki's, very different from Ray's, very different from me. And so for me to look at the old ways of us finding common ground is a little bit, well, chocolate's big in Belgium, the Canadians really hate chocolate. I don't know what those markers may be, but it goes back into sort of what Claudio was asking us to which is it becomes a little bit more luminal. It becomes a little bit more of of awareness of what that common vision. And you've introduced the same notion, however, Jaloki, is when people fail to find that common vision, when people fail to be able to get that collective dance, things devolve into chaos and battles ensue. But this is that opportunity. So I feel like I've just had a TED Talk moment, but feel free at this moment. Did that resonate, Ray? Did that kick up anything for you?
Oh, so much. I'm still processing in my brain. Keep going.
No, and I'm ready for someone. I need to tag out. Someone tag me out and to keep
Well,
me
well, I
there.
can. Go
Oh,
ahead,
go ahead.
Sam.
And I'll use an example. I like to give examples so we can see. And this is a very interesting example. I was taking a writing class, and we were told, buy a gift for someone who's a female, 29 years old. She drives a Nissan, lives in the city, right? That's all we know. So you buy her a gift. So you buy her, say, I don't know, a water bottle, and she's like, and she doesn't even like water. She doesn't like anything, right? So you just buy what you know. Then we were invited to, now there's a 29-year-old woman who lives in the suburbs. She jogs every morning. She does yoga. She's a writer at the newspaper. Like all these things, now you understand what she does. So you can now buy a gift that is for her, not for you, for her. Right.
Mhm.
And so having that understanding, because the more you know, and you say, oh, well, she might like this, even if it's a gift card or something. And so having that level of understanding of what do other people, how they want to be treated. And I have run into that resistance when I've said to others, this is what I need. This is how I want to be spoken to. And they're like, well, I will talk to you any way I want to. And I was like, you're right. You can. I just don't have to listen. Right. And so then eventually that conversation, because of my continuing recognizing that pattern and interrupting their pattern of, I'm going to talk to you however I want to, but I'm not going to talk to you when you still talk to me that way, then the pattern is eventually broken, because if they want to talk to me, they have to talk to me a specific way.
Right.
So
They have to talk to you. They have to treat you the way that
I want to be
they want to
treated.
others. Yeah, the diamond rule shows up.
Yes.
Who's next? Ali.
I think Oli, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will be short and sweet as always. I love the quote from Maya Angelou, I am a human being. Nothing human can be alien to me. And I was having this reflection. It's like also Voltaire saying that I might not agree with what you say, but I will let you the space to you to speak. But at some point, it gets really worse, because it means that we are allowing people to do their harm. So they have also to have accountability. My thought was, do I, because I'm going to say about do I find something in Mother Teresa that I dislike? And do I find something in Hitler that I like? Because there is nothing black or white. We are human beings, and we are containing some parts of constructive and some parts of destructive. So it's to recognize, maybe Hitler was liking paintings, and maybe there are paintings I can relate that Hitler was liking. It doesn't mean that I like the whole Hitler. So it's also to realize that we can also agree and disagree on specific parts of the person, not saying, okay, but so another example I was finding is Arthur C. Clarke, 2001, some sci-fi books was amazing. But the guy I was not liking because of assumption, maybe it was not true, but assumption of pedophilia in Sri Lanka. So all these things of battling to, okay, do I have to accept the person as a whole, or can I take some part of the person that I liked? So that's my share. Thank you.
You got it. Before you talk, Jolikie, I want to give you some love from the chat, which says, love the share of the diamond rule as it requires the relocation of oneself over where another is, thus a willingness to release ourselves and return through them. So
Thank you, and respect for that. I resonate. Yes, I want to go back to Maya Angelou's quote from Orly. I am a human, so nothing human can be alien to me. My personal extrapolation interpretation of this quote is that when she says I am a human, she assumes I am a sane human. I'm a full human. Because when I am a traumatized, wounded human, things are different. And by the way, my personal application of the diamond rule has led me to understand something that may feel counterintuitive for many people, but my understanding is that the more someone is wanting to harm is an indication of the degree that they have been harmed.
yeah,
The more someone wants power is an indication of how they feel powerless.
right.
And so when I understand that, I may overstand Okay, and first, okay, recognize, okay, there's wound there, there's trauma, there's a need for healing, for care. I may or may not be able to help. And again, it will determine my reaction. And again, unfortunately, even with all that, it may devolve to war.
Correct. And that's the beautiful part of staying in the overstanding. Because the understanding sometimes means I have to agree with it. The overstanding says I can see it and not agree with it and not react to it because I know it doesn't connect and attach to me. So I remember an author who had said, then my next book I've decided was a self-help author. This was back in the days, right? Was Hitler Goes to Heaven. And just what discord that would create in the metaphysical community, right? Because there had been so many transgressions, right, that had happened. And I really think that one of the things that you say about the diamond rule, Jaloki, it's that treat others the way they want to be treated. That requires a almost broader definition of human, which we were doing with the Maya Angelou definition. So I think that that's an important context to remember. Is that there is that overstanding that we're now inviting people to get to. So what do you choose when understanding isn't enough? Maybe it's just simply coming to an overstanding of what is.
Yay.
So we can all go home now.
Woohoo! Yay!
But no, I think that this is one of those conversations, when we were talking a little bit before we got started, because it seems really esoteric and, what does it mean understanding? As I tried to allow for us to have at the beginning is if we can allow ourselves that overstanding, because I think some of these terms that you've introduced and that have been introduced today are really, really beautiful content. The idea that the diamond rule, of course, but even going back to find the human connection, right? In that pause that Claudia was reminding us to do is to find that, pick a detail, as Ray kind of gave it a little bit more of a context, pick a detail that expands the discussion, right? Is that the common vision? Is that the fact that both Seng and I have an interest in dogs, right? Is that whatever those common ground rules are, because it does what the people are commenting in the chat, it allows us to go back to this idea of bringing a level of engagement with curiosity, right? What is the other trying to and again, we all know about the dissolution into battle, into the battle context, right? But as we can work to embody that, right? Because then people begin when it is remarkable what happens when you can see other people as human beings. Now, some people will use, again, we have to be sensitive to, if our friend Marianne were here, she would have to say, there's going to be a trickster in the room who has as their joy in life, finding humans and going, poof, and just kind of, bopping them on the head and watching them tip over. But that is,
And they're probably going to heaven.
along with Hitler. So but anyway, I don't want to bring this to a close, but we're at almost at the top of the hour, and I want to make sure to take a breath here now. What else does anyone have that adds to this?
I just have an invitation as well, as always, for everyone to think to ask self, what would I do differently today if I trusted everything I already understand and know for self? And just sit with that and truly, because again, it starts with self for me. It didn't always start with self for me. But I think once I began learning myself, I then became much more understanding of others.
Right.
And so, and then even in this, yeah, it's what would I do differently today if I trusted everything I already know and understood for self?
Love that.
Thank you.
Yes,
I would
Chaluki.
like to add
Oh,
to
Claudia.
that. Oh, I'm sorry.
Go
I
ahead.
would just like to add to that saying,
Yeah.
without, or not without, but also to engage in curiosity even further about myself and others.
Mhm.
That's all. Thank you.
No, Claudia, curiosity is the huge thing. You know, I cannot tell you how many people my age who's like, what, when the hell did you lose your curiosity about things? When did you just become this embodied judgment about everything that happens in the world? Are you not even the least bit curious anymore? Like, because it is something that you want to keep alive, and it's what fuels, if you will, the diamond rule.
Because we're always changing,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
So what we know about ourselves today may be different than what we know about ourselves tomorrow or the next week.
I love that.
I know it's time. I know it's time. So I'm going to drop a little bomb here. I personally do not believe in heaven as in heaven, hell, and purgatory, but in what in my belief would correspond to heaven. We are all going to heaven at one point, including Hitler.
There you go. And I thank you all for participating in a little bit of heaven this morning. And
Thank you.
heaven would not be possible if it weren't for our friends at the Breakthrough Show
We are
Network.
all angels.
Oh, wait. What did you want to say, Ali?
We are all angels anyway.
That's right.
In a physical form, and it's to recognize that if someone is triggering something within me, it's a good message for us to introspect and say, there is something that is triggering me. Let's explore rather than to respond and react. That's my share.
So we invite you to dance with angels as we dance with us, and we'll be back here on the Breakthrough Show Network at the same time next week. If you'd like to, you can join us for the after discussion that we have in this room. Raleigh's got his angel out at rsslive.org. You're always welcome to come in. We're always grateful to be here. And as always, I'm grateful for all of the contributions from the chat and from the voices in the room. Until next week, let's continue waking up to what's emerging. We'll see you then.